Welcome. In today's tutorial we will cover a leaning mechanic in the TSS Game Starter Kit, the twin stick shooter game starter kit made by SB. Now, you might be aware that there is a tutorial on how to implement leaning in the FPS Game Starter Kit also made by SB, but you will need to make some changes to this in order for leaning to work in the TSS kit. So let's get right into it. Now, keep in mind this tutorial is meant for beginners, so we will go step by step over everything, and everything is already done. As you can see, I got the variables we have to create here. We will do everything from scratch. So, first thing you do, you open the BP character base blueprint, and you will be met by something like this. Now all we have to do is add two variables here. Press on this plus sign and add one example leaning, and this is gonna be a float, and it's gonna be replicated. Set the replication to replicated. Okay, now we're gonna add another variable, and we're gonna say example is leaning question mark, and this is gonna be a bool instead of a float, and it's also gonna be replicated. Compile, save. That is, we are done with our character. Now, as usual, I have all the tabs open, but I will show you how to go quickly to those blueprints. Select your mesh in your character base and click this icon here, browse to asset in content browser, and it will lead you to the animation blueprint that we need. Double click it to open this window. Now here we have a few things that we need to do, as you can see. First off, from the character base, drag out is leaning. Make sure you compiled and saved on the previous window if you don't see it here in the list. And get leaning. So we got those two. Our next step is to drag out of the leaning and make rotator. Now it's gonna put you by default in X roll. We don't need X, we need Y. And from there, from this make rotator, from this pin here, you will drag out and say invert rotator. And after you're done with that, you're gonna say promote to variable from that pin. I already have a pin, so we're gonna say example rot. And for the leaning, we're just gonna drag out from the is leaning that we dragged already out and promote to variable and say I already have the pin, so example leaning question mark. So you connect them and you connect them to the logic just like the one I already made. And that is it for that part. Now, there's some changes we need to do here. So go to your anim graph. You need to make this transform modify bone. So transform modify bone. There it is. And you can get these will be made automatically, these local to when you drag out let's say where is locomotion. I think by default it's connected just locomotion to the default locomotion, and you just basically do this and it will create the local component. The same goes for the default location on this side. It will create this node. Now, we can hide the rest. We don't need a scale. We don't need a translation. We just need the rotation. And we connect our rot that we made. And alpha is also not needed. That's how you get that node. Now you have to assign a bone, of course, otherwise it will not know what to modify. And you can look up what bone you need. I found that it works best for spine 1 in this example. So there you have it. We made our little... We gave this animation the ability to rotate this mesh from this bone. Rotation mode add to existing. So instead of ignore, you say add to existing. And that should be now identical. Okay. The next thing you need, well, you don't need it. It will already work like this, but I wanted it to stand out. When you actually lean, the gun goes a bit up, and it will help you with aiming for down the road, you know. So what we need is blend poses by bool. Press enter and it will spawn it like this. So we're gonna connect our leaning to it. And in between the default slot and output pose, connected to the false pins. On the true odd, though, we have to do something else. And you can copy this logic from here. Just copy and paste it up here, for example. Connect it to the true. And instead of this default locomotion, what we want him to do is, you can look up here, idle iron sight, rifle iron sight. Just drag it out, delete the default one, and connect it to the source. And what this will do is it will turn the upper body part of the mesh into this iron sight animation. And just connect the pins, and you should get something like this. Compile, of course, and save, and off to the next step. So, BP player controller. I assume that you can reach that also from the no? Okay, then just find it. Should be under system there. Player controller. Now, I know it looks like a mess, but this is basically just a copy from the upper part. But let's start with making some events. We're gonna need 3 events. So we're gonna need custom event, and we're gonna call it example lean right. And then you can just copy paste that and rename it to example lean left. And again, copy paste, and we will call this example reset, example lean reset. Good. And now what we have to do is you drag out your player cast that you should see here, and you say set leaning. That is one part, and the other part is set is leaning. So basically the two variables we made in the beginning. And you want to connect them up. You can go ahead and copy paste those. Reset is perfect, it's just the way it's supposed to be. All you need to do is drag the pins and make a new target here. And you can call this target player or character or whatever. And it's already set up the way it's supposed to be, so it's not leaning, the is leaning is turned off. But for our leaning examples, we have to do a few things differently. We can delete this now. First, we're gonna need a target too. And we're gonna drag that out, and for the left one too. This will always be leaning as long as this is active. Unless this is called, it won't stop being in a leaning position. Now, the leaning amount is something we want to manipulate though. So we're gonna drag out and make a leaning float inside of this, inside of these costume events. And you can rename them to player, character, whatever, but for now you're done with this. Compile, save, and now the next step is to go to this event, and instead of not replicated, turn it on run on server. While SP's tutorial says to say it's reliable, I leave that up to you. So run on server, reliable, and run on server, reliable. So okay, basically you're telling the server, okay, this character here is currently leaning. That's why we see the other character lean in multiplayer. And of course, this is what I made previously. Let's just move that a bit up. And now we have to recreate this. Now I put the leanings on 1 and 3 for now. So let's recreate this. What we do now is let's actually go with 2 and 4. Just so we don't bother the other logic. Now 4 you can ignore for now. Let's just set up 2. Of course, you see what we do here. We drag out the player cast. We get the leaning. And we're telling him, if the leaning is smaller or equal, we can use here, then 0.2, if you click anywhere while holding B, the left mouse button, it will create you a branch. That's how we made it that quickly. So this allows for a bit of wiggle room. It doesn't have to be completely at 0 leaning, so you can lean again. Now the next step is, oh yeah, you have to create a good. We have to create another variable here inside of the controller too. I called it B is leaning, but let's say example B is leaning. And this is in order to manipulate the workings around here and set that to replicate it too. And with that created, we're gonna create another branch on the true part. So if you are leaning, if you are already leaning, do nothing. Don't bother. On the other hand, if it's not leaning, we're gonna set it to be leaning. So now you actually started to lean. And this is where our timeline comes now. It's pretty straightforward. You can decrease the length if you want, but we're gonna recreate that now. So we type in timeline, add timeline. Gonna say leaning 101. And so the player was not leaning up until this point. Now he is leaning. Now please do the stuff you're supposed to do. And on the release of key number 2, we will say go in reverse. Just back up. Okay, this is the basic stuff. And you could actually copy this already over to your other leaning key. So you select all, and you can, if you want to quickly duplicate something, you press Ctrl and W. And of course we go again. If it's pressed, do this logic. If it's released, reverse. Good. First part is done. Now we have to set up the actual rotating and camera shifting that I do in this tutorial. So what we need to do is get the player cast again, get the camera. So let's do that. We're gonna get the player cast and we're gonna drag out get camera. Should be under default the last one. And we're gonna say set relative location. On every update, we're gonna lerp vector. You know, you can play around with these values. The default value is like 2090, I think. What was it? Was it 0? Oh yeah, for the camera it was 0. Yeah. Good. But let's say this is for what? This is for the left leaning. It's negative 120 in the y-axis. Negative 120 in the y-axis. This is basically leaning left. The camera will shift its relative location a bit to the left. Oh, and your timeline is probably empty now, but we're gonna create that value. So the length is gonna be 0.2. And it's gonna be a float track, and we're gonna name it val, short for value. And we're gonna say add keyframe. It's gonna be 0, 0, 0, everything 0, and the other keyframe is gonna be at 0.2 time, and it's gonna have a value of 1. And that's it. That's our timeline. And we will get a pin that says value now that we created it, and we will connect it to the alpha. Now let's already make that for the other timeline. Just recreate. Mind you, if you have 0 point some values. Usually in Unreal Engine you can just press dot and 2, for example. It will automatically be 0.2. So add a flow track, while same values, add a keyframe, 0, 0, add another keyframe. It's gonna be 0.2 time, it's gonna be value 1. Just to make it look better, you can zoom to fit horizontal and vertical, so you know what's happening. And there you go. Okay, off to the next thing. Next thing we do, and the SP's tutorial says to do, is set control rotation. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna drag out from the next pin and say set control rotation. And here we have a default value. I see. This might actually not be even working in this example, because I just noticed it just takes the control rotation that's by default. You might be able just to skip this, but we will implement it too, just an easier version of this. So let's say select from this pin. Oh, not select, I mean lerp. We're gonna need a lerp rotator, that's it. And to be honest, I think you can completely skip on this part, but let's just make it just to be sure. Get control rotation for A, and for B we're gonna need some changes. We're gonna break it, and we are taking okay. So you can do this here like this. We're gonna break this, drag from here and say break, and then say drag from here and say make, and connect up the Y and Z, while the X we're gonna deal with later, because it's gonna take a literal float. All right, okay, let's make some space. This is kind of difficult to see now. Okay. All right. The next step is we do a flip-flop. Flip-flop. Now you were wondering probably, why am I doing a flip-flop here? What's the point of this? And it is to reduce the stress on the replication. Because let me tell you something, replication and rotation do not like each other. They never did, and they probably never will. But basically what we're calling now for is we're pinging the server. Without the flip-flop it would be even worse. But with this flip-flop, for other players, it will see like you're a bit staggering. For you, it will be a clean. It looks like you're doing a clean lean. For other players, it will look like you're a bit staggering. But the logic is still there. So we're gonna say lean left. We're doing first left. And the character is, of course, the character. Player character. And the leaning, now this is where you're gonna drag out and say literal float, make literal float. And you can already connect this pin also to the X roll we had. And we're gonna say 55, or was it negative 55 in this case? Let me see. No, it was positive 55. But this needs to go on a lerp. And that lerp is gonna be 0 from A to the literal float on B. And the alpha is gonna be our value that we made on the timeline. So, what does this mean? In those 0.2 seconds, it will go from 0 to 55. Every second step it does, it will send the server the info. Hey, this guy is doing the leaning stuff. Can you show that to other players? And after that is done, what we are going to do is go to the finished execution pin. Or to be precise, from the direction pin below it, drag out and say switch on E timeline direction. And connect that to the finish. Drag that out somewhere where it doesn't bother you. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna copy over this code, paste it right here, and we're gonna set the leaning to also connect the literal float. So everything you need to manipulate you can do from here. You don't have to edit it 3 times, different values, you know. That's on our forward. So basically the player is leaning, do this at the end, keep it at this location. But if it's in reverse, if it's going back, what we need you to do is lean reset. Set us back upright. And connect the char pin to the player cast and then backwards to the lean reset. And that is it. You have created leaning to the left. Now what we do, we copy over this, all of it. Just select it all and go a bit down and Control W while everything is still selected to duplicate it. There you go. We got that. Connect up the update pin and the finish pin. And of course, we need to do the values again to the alphas. And there you have it. But you need to change, what you need to change is we're not going with the camera to the negative side, to the left, we're going to the positive, so 120. And the literal float needs to be in the negatives now. So let's go negative 55. And instead of being lean left on the lower one, we need it to be lean right. Connect the character, connect the leaning to the lerp, delete the old one. You can copy and paste lean right down and do the proper connections. If you want to drag out a pin and connect it to another one, you can hold down Control, select the pin and drag it over. And then delete the left leaning, and there it is, leaning right. Compile, save, and that should be it. Let's try it out. Okay, now pressing 2 and okay. Aha, I see. There's one last thing you need to do. We need to tell him, no, this is no longer leaning. And tell him, No, this is no longer leaning. After the reset, we're resetting this bool that we made here. Okay, compile, save. Let's check it out again. Let's see. Ah, that's the problem. Make sure to connect that direction to the direction timeline. Okay, compile, save. Yes, that's it. We got it now. Now there is an issue because some guns will fire from the player's capsule component. If you're implementing a leaning system, you will need to create a new gun that is never fired from the player but from the weapon's position of the muzzle. So you have this option here. I made a child character of a sniper. So let me actually create another one so you know what I'm talking about. Go to the weapon name here, as you can see, and you can right click on it and say browse to asset. It will lead you to this weapon sniper, and you can say create child. Doesn't matter the name. Gonna drag it out here, but before I use it, I'm gonna go into the settings and say do not spawn from the character, spawn from the muzzle socket name, whatever it is. And it's not gonna have a spread, it's a sniper. Compile, save. And because when you take the normal sniper, the leaning doesn't do much for you, you know? You see, it shoots at this collision thing. But if you take this sniper, it will shoot from the gun. So leaning has, you know, it has some purpose. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I will include all the downloadables and images like previously, and the download links into the video description. Yeah. Thanks for watching and see you later. Bye.